Hello, I'm Dr. Jim Siebert. It's time for our daily outlook in the tropics, our tropical forecast, and obviously we're going to be focusing on Hurricane Ida. Here we go. Category 1 hurricane making landfall and interacting with Cuba today. But if you look very carefully, notice that we've got circulation now all the way around. So it is actually pulling in moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, even though it's going to be interacting with Cuba. So it might slow down just a little bit, might knock down the winds just a little bit, but it's only going to be brief as it just barrels across and moves into the Gulf of Mexico. Once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, we do expect that it's going to grow, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. So here's a look at the numbers and everything. We got winds currently up to 80 miles per hour. So we just got the 4 p.m. update. So winds were 75 miles per hour. They're up to 80. It's moving to the northwest at 15, so it is moving faster. So even now, if you look at this, by Saturday, 1 o'clock in the morning, after crossing Cuba, barely getting into the Gulf of Mexico, becomes a Category 2 hurricane with winds at 100 miles an hour. Then we go to Category 3 by Saturday night. So between now and Saturday evening, winds are going to go up to 120 miles per hour. And as I look at it, I think it might even go beyond that, go over 130 miles per hour, which would then put it up into a Category 4. I'll show you why here in just a second as well. But that kind of gives you an idea. The forecast has not really changed that much. Now, with each update, though, it moves a couple of miles to the east. So it's not jogging back towards the west. It's not coming towards us. None of southeast Texas is included in the cone, in the watches, in any of that situation. But no, in fact, now look, they're even saying Category 4 as well in this latest update. So this really is the latest update. The conditions are just perfect for a hurricane right now in this part of the Gulf of Mexico. And that's just a dangerous thing. It's going to become a very large and very powerful and a very fast storm all at once. The hurricane warnings are going to go all the way into Alabama, probably, and Mississippi. The storm surge is going to be anywhere from 11, 14, maybe even 15 feet, could be higher than that as I see it as well. So that's all going to be mostly on this side of the storm. Now for us, because of the placement of the storm for Houston, southeast Texas, this is going to have very little impact at all on us. And what we are going to see is some rain that is moving in that will get here on Saturday. Has nothing to do with the storm itself, but we are going to see rain on Saturday for us, not part of the hurricane. We'll take a look at the rainfall totals here in just a second. Now, once it makes landfall, Monday afternoon, still a tropical storm, doesn't drop down to being a depression until Tuesday, and then moves on. So it will slow down somewhat. It's not going to stall. It's not going to do anything like that, but it will not move fast enough for the folks in Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi to get on out of there. They're going to want to. Now, as far as the computer models, they've really come into focus like the last several days, and so our confidence is very high on what's going to happen with this, especially once we get out here. Now, again, I'm noticing that some of the modeling still wants to keep pushing it to the east a little bit more. And if you ever want to just get a rough estimate of what the forecast is going to do, so the modeling comes out, then the meteorologists at the National Hurricane Center look at all that and look at all the information, and then they come up with their forecast, and then they show that. So the modeling changes before the forecast does. That's why I'm always watching it. And again, I don't look at just one of the models. I want to look at all of them. I want to look at the trend. And as I see it, the trend is pretty consistent. It's just a couple of miles east each of the forecast runs. And that's the only differences that we're going to see. So at this point, we're not talking about any major changes expected in this forecast. We're pretty confident that it's going to hit mostly in Louisiana. Now, here's why, two things. What's driving this, and another reason why I think it's also going to explode. This is the Bermuda High. We've been talking about this for several days now. This is in the higher levels of the atmosphere. It's not down here at the surface. It's up very high. This is where everything gets driven as far as big weather patterns, like a hurricane. And what's happening is this spins, and you can even see the wind arrows, the vectors. You see how they're coming through here? And as this storm comes right in this region, it's just going to get pushed right into New Orleans. And it's not going to really, once it comes into the Gulf, it's not going to be spinning back and forth or turning. It's just going to take a beeline and it's going to make it straight into it. Now, another thing about this high pressure and why I think the storm is going to get stronger as it comes into the Gulf of Mexico is that above a hurricane, you actually need to have a little bit of high pressure. It kind of clears the atmosphere. If you have really, really strong winds, that will kind of blow the hurricane apart. That's not what's going on here. You have just that right amount of a little bit of sinking air that will feed into the hurricane, which is actually breathing in and breathing out, and that's how it's going to form. So once it moves out closer and that high pressure is actually really driving it, that's when it's going to just sort of open up the top of the storm and allow things to breathe at the top. Now, at the bottom, we've got super warm water in the Gulf of Mexico. So we've got 85 to 86, 87 degree water. Now, when we talk about hurricanes, when you get water temperature at 80 degrees, that's when the water temperature is warm enough that it's producing evaporation that could be enough to support a hurricane. When you get to about 82 to 83 degrees or so, good Category 1 hurricane is a possibility. When you move up to the 84 to 85, Category 3, 85 and above, when you get the warmer water, and what that means is each degree warmer, it just exponentially changes how much humidity, how much evaporation is going on at the surface. And it's that evaporation that the storm feeds on. And then in the end, when it's all within the storm and it rains, that's part of the breathing in and breathing out process. And so this hot water down here on the Gulf of Mexico, which is not just at the surface, it's deep water that's really warm. It's just going to feed it. It's kind of like when you put gasoline on a fire and it just explodes. So at the surface, what it's feeding on is the humidity, that moisture, and at the top, it's able to breathe because that high pressure is exactly where it needs to be to allow that to happen. Those things are going to happen. So while it's a Category 1 right now, it'll be a Category 2 by tomorrow, Category 3 by tomorrow, and then jump to Category 4 status really fast. That's what we call a loaded atmosphere when it comes tropically speaking. That's exactly what's going to happen here. Now, we haven't talked much about the rainfall, but notice this is now the GFS futurecast for rain. I stopped it here on Saturday afternoon because I wanted you to see that, yeah, we're going to have rain here in the Houston area, but anywhere from about a half an inch, maybe up to an inch in some isolated spots. And notice, not so bad either here in southeast Louisiana, but watch what happens. So this is Saturday. This is all before Ida rain. Then Ida moves in, and watch what happens. It explodes. Because when you have a hurricane that has enough moisture in it to produce Category 4 status and the upper level winds to support it, it's just a conveyor belt of rain. And it is just going to dump the rain. Right now, some of the estimates could be anywhere from 15 to 20 inches of rain in this area where the white shows up. And once it moves more to the north and it starts to spread it around, it comes down to about 8 to 10 inches of rain and for a very large area. So this is not only going to be a huge windstorm, it's also going to be a big rainmaker. And so it's going to be devastating. It just is going to be devastating. So I feel for our people, our friends that are going to be dealing with this. Now, as we look to the future, there are a couple of systems we're tracking out in the Atlantic. They're not pointed towards land at all. Julian would be the next name. Kate after that. If you're keeping score, we've already had 5 named storms make landfall already this year. This will be the first hurricane. And that pretty much gets us up to speed, at least at this point anyway. So expect the storm will certainly grow the moment it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. Impacts are minimal here in the Houston area. And again, all of our thoughts and prayers are going to be going to all the folks in Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi who are really going to be dealing with this storm. We'll see you again real soon.